This video will be a sort of personal commentary. I love this film, so I thought I'd try to articulate some of the reasons why. It's a hard film to talk about, as you'll see, but I'll do my best. So this might defeat the purpose of what I'm doing here, but if you mute the audio, you'll actually have the experience of watching the film as it was meant to be seen, which is in total silence. Actually, if I don't say anything, you'll see that it's pretty hard to ignore that silence. Just watch. Here's Amos Vogel.
Dreams are essentially silent. This was a very important element in the films to me, the silence. And here was somebody who was able to represent this dream reality, this inner reality, on film. Wonderful.
Meshes of the Afternoon is considered one of the earliest landmarks in experimental cinema. It was shot in 1943 by Deren and her husband at the time, Alex Hammid. And that's it. They shot it in their home in Los Angeles for about $250, which is less than $5,000 today. So, in a way, it's a home movie, but because of how much thought and care was put into it, it comes out as much more. There's something inspiring about that attitude of just making something in your own home with whatever you have around you, but at the same time to take it seriously. It also makes the film feel more personal. They're a real couple, that's their real kitchen. Even if the story they're telling isn't real, or at least not completely. I think the smartest thing this movie does is the way it tells its story. You'll notice certain shots and objects will repeat throughout, and each time they do, they reveal just a little bit more than we knew before. Like that black curtain, which is not something I noticed on a first watch. A silent record player, which is pretty funny. The film moves in and out of subjectivity. Right now we're in a POV shot, so it's as if we are the woman coming down the stairs. But then we cut to an objective shot of her sitting down. Some critics at the time actually criticized this back and forth as being too inconsistent or loose, but I don't think so. I find it intentional and playful. It's a direct means of conveying the fractured headspace of this character. That's not just a cool camera trick either. I'd say this is a key part of what the film is about. We're entering her mind, almost literally. There's the black curtain again. I love this image. It's so weird and abstract, but it's also practical and almost familiar. And now we're back at the beginning. Sort of. Things are a little different. We've seen the face of the man, which actually isn't a face, and there's more urgency as she runs, like she's trying to catch up, maybe find some sort of answer. I won't pretend to know exactly what this film means. I actually think the more that's left unexplained, the better. So please watch and interpret to your liking. There's Maya Deren. This is the first time we've seen her face. She was in a lot of her films, actually. And again, it's encouraging to see just that total independence. I could see how she's become an inspiration for a lot of filmmakers, especially women. I know that in her later films, she would storyboard the way a person would move in the frame and how the frame would move with them. Look at this shot, for example. The way the camera rises with her as she practically floats up the stairs. She was a dancer, so she had a real intuitive understanding of the human body, and she brought that to the screen. So you might notice that the film breaks the rules of space and time. She came up the stairs, but now we've just seen her come through the window. Pretty soon, the film itself will start to break with it. I mean that cinematically. The camera becomes free and wild and twisting at weird angles, and she's being pulled away by this strange wind, like it's trying to pull her back to her own body. Maya Deren was a meticulous planner. As spontaneous as some of this might feel, there was no improv or figuring it out on the day. She was very deliberate about how to shoot each moment. You'll see later that it comes down to even the scale of each individual cut. This is the voice of Miriam Arsham.
Every single thing she said was prearranged in her notes, in her mind. She used to write things on little 3x5 index cards and carry them with her everywhere. I mean, she would kill me if she heard me say this, but it always made me think of students of the Talmud, where you take one sentence out of the Bible and you can write 50 books based on that one sentence. That's exactly what Maya did. Every word, every possible meaning. In other words, she didn't expand what she knew, but she went down into it.
That might be the best way to describe what's happening here. The film is folding in on itself. She becomes an observer of her own past or present or future, or whatever this is. Maya Deren herself has said this film is less about an event as it is about the experience of an event. I'd add that the way she chooses to portray that experience is what makes that the case. It's how it's about, not what it's about. That's one of the reasons why I like to come back to this movie. It's a lesson I try to remind myself. Even if the story you're trying to tell is more straightforward or grounded in a narrative, there's always room to play around with how you decide to shoot a certain scene or moment, to allow the medium itself to say something. I just wanted to let that play out because it's so cool. Again, there's that creative freedom that's so fresh and alive. The threat of violence here and those little horror elements like the Mirror Man have a bit of mainstream attraction to them. We want to know how this ends. I think this is the fourth repetition we're at now. And now is when we start to get some answers. The key is the knife is the key. The same three women sit at a table, while the other one is still asleep on the chair. One picks it up, but it comes right back. The same for the second. But now something else happens. I love these simple symbols like the knife, the key, the weird eye goggles, because of how simple they are. There's an association with them, but they're also vague enough so that there's room for interpretation. This is what I meant by it being planned to the cut, by the way. And we've now built to the climax. All those patterns and repetitions are about to pay off. That might be my favorite moment of the film. Somehow I feel the shock of it every time, even without any sound to cue it or emphasize it in any way. As much of a collaboration as this was, and there's been some discrepancy about who contributed more than the other over the years, it's hard to ignore Maya Deren's presence here. She was one of those people that took over a room, or in this case, a frame, so naturally. Aside from her films, she was a strong vocal advocate for independent cinema in general. She wrote articles for film journals and magazines. She spoke at public halls and lectures and pushed for her own personal expression till she died. She was 44.
What I do in my films is I think very distinctively, I think they are the films of a woman, and I think that their characteristic time quality is the time quality of a woman. I think that the strength of men is their great sense of immediacy. They are a now creature, and a woman has strength to wait because she's had to wait. She has to wait 9 months for the concept of a child. Time is built into her body in the sense of becomingness, and she sees everything in terms of it being in the stage of becoming. She raises a child knowing not what it is at any moment, but seeing always the person that it will become. Her whole life, from her very beginning, it's built into her, is the sense of becoming. Now, in any time form, this is a very important sense. I think that my films, putting as much stress as they do upon the constant metamorphosis, one image is always becoming another. That is, it is what is happening that is important in my films, not what is at any moment. This is a woman's time sense, and I think it happens more in my films than in almost anyone else's.